Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Business Casual. I'm Emma Henderson, Managing Editor of Aftermarket News, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. That is Mario Garza. He is Vice President of Marketing for Motorcar Parts of America. How are you doing today, Mario?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, Emma?
Good, good. And I'm excited about our topic. It's awareness of the aftermarket. I think sometimes we take it for granted because we work in the automotive aftermarket that some people don't necessarily have a vast understanding of exactly what we do. And with your role in marketing, you want to help change that and educate the average person on the value of our industry. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So I kind of have had a unique career path. So I've worked with, retailers, I've worked with traditional distribution, and now I find myself on the supplier side in the marketing role. And so it always surprises me when people like aren't aware of the quality and the know-how of the aftermarket, and I kind of take it as an opportunity to educate friends and family. And then my where my head goes is, okay, well, if my friends and family who've known me for 47 years don't know about this, I can only imagine how many people that I don't know aren't aware, and how can I use that to really, as a driving force to educate and to make it fun and exciting about the automotive aftermarket.
So, what are some ways that you feel that you at MPA are working to kind of raise people's, I guess, aftermarket IQ, for lack of a better term, to have them understand, oh, there are alternatives? You were telling me about a friend who went to the dealer and maybe didn't get the best deal, and you were like, I could have helped you if you just asked.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is educating about the quality of products, the available resources from an education standpoint about all the parts and products. No matter no matter where you go to get your parts. I'm not so much worried about if you turn right or turn left into a store to get your parts, but it's more about that these parts are available and the level of education that's available, not only from those places where you may decide to go buy, but also what's available on the web or on YouTube, where we spend a lot of time educating and helping the consumer troubleshoot so they can either do it themselves or they can become more educated if they do take it to a professional repair shop, exactly what's going to happen. Because I tend to think the more people are familiar about what's going on with their vehicles, the more likelihood they are to, do the research beforehand and pick the right solution for them.
Absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, when they're looking for a part that might come from the aftermarket, they're almost in emergency panic mode because probably their car is broken down and they need something. So, how do we work to educate people when they're not in that panic mode so that when that happens, they know to be more educated on it?
So, from a marketing perspective, what we try to do is just to be consistent in our messaging about who we are. So whether it's on social media, whether it's partnering with some of our customers on how they advertise. It's a coin that we've kind of phrased internally, what we call like flood the system. So we just want to make sure that we're consistent. Our messaging is out there. So, you may see some of our advertising or some of our branding or technical content that we release. You're going to see it all the time. So hopefully, in the event when something does happen, you'll just kind of remember, oh, yeah, I remember I saw that ad, or I didn't know that that part was available, or oh, I didn't know how to do a voltage drop test. I have an ohm meter in my garage. Let me go watch that video and see what the true problem is, versus kind of just defaulting back to, well, I think I bought my car from XYZ. Let me take it over there to that place.
So it's kind of classic brand awareness through using all of the different platforms that are available today. Now, you said our industry has a good opportunity to also take marketing cues from other industries. When you talk about that, what does that mean, and how do you think that we can be doing things differently?
I think the biggest thing is being aware of all the different trends that are like on YouTube. YouTube is huge, and how, you know, embracing the QR code. I'll say the code culture, but using that technology because everybody is using their phone. Their phone is everything. So how do we take our normal collateral and make it available on a phone where you can click to get the latest information? You know, one of the things that we're doing or that we talk about is the podcast platform. You know, you see so much content that's available on podcasts where people are doing videos in long form, then they're taking the long form and then they're cutting it down into short form videos, which you can then repurpose and re-promote. You know, I watch a lot of sports shows, and so I pay attention to the more popular ones that you're seeing, you know, on ESPN, or you know, you see those podcasters really stepping out of the norm and doing a lot of innovative stuff, or even some of the big box retailers like the Best Buys of the world, or you know, some of those consumer electronics industries that they do a real innovative job of reaching their target audience.
And I think with that, there's almost two different audiences because you can advertise with the content that other people watch already, or you could create your own content and then get views from that as well.
Right. It's kind of hitting them, and it's kind of hitting the target audience in a multitude of ways. You know, how do you take how do you take a 7-minute video and slice it and make it something unique? And what's the form? Is it, you know, faceless video? Is there some augmented, is there some, like some AI that you introduce at the right time? Or how do you use, you know, 3D or animation? So we experiment with a lot of different mediums. And again, it's all to get that audience engaging with your content so that you can educate, inform, and how do you make it engaging for them and exciting for them to want to watch?
That is an interesting point because I feel like people are constantly just getting busier. They have more platforms that they can look at. And so their time is becoming more and more precious. So, how do you capture people's attention when you only have a quick amount of time?
That's a very, really good question. It's ever changing. I'll say that. So what we try to do is again take cues from other industries, take cues from, you know, what we gravitate to. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we're all consumers, and so I tried to think about it from a consumer's perspective. What would grab my attention? What would make me want to watch longer than 5 seconds? We engage a lot with some of our customers, like what are they seeing? You know, last year we had the privilege of partnering with one of the larger national repair chains. And we had a good panel, and we're like, well, what do y'all engage in? What platforms are you watching? And surprisingly, a lot of them are engaged in TikTok. They're like, hey, we like the short TikTok style videos. Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what the fix is. They're using a lot of influencers, so popular people that they're following. I mean, because the technician world is getting younger and younger, so we're trying to make sure that we're not doing the things that we were doing 20 years ago or 30 years ago. That we're trying to keep things fresh and keep our target audience in mind, but also paying attention to what, you know, the next generation of technicians or automotive enthusiasts are engaging with.
When you started in marketing in the aftermarket, did you ever think you'd be talking about influencers and TikTok as potential opportunities for branding?
Not at all. It's so funny you say that because, you know, I graduated college back in 2000 with a marketing degree, and I look at it now, and it's completely changed. You know, the principles are still there, but we're not advertising on billboards. We're not running 30-second spots on TV. It's now connected TV, it's now connected radio. You have YouTube, you have Spotify, you have Apple TV, you have QR codes, you have Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have TikTok, you have all these different ways of reaching your audience. So the one thing it's kind of taught us is you got to be diverse and you got to have a lot of content, a lot of content.
Yeah, so it's not just print, it's not just television. There are like 10 other screens involved and like 50 other apps on top of that that you can engage with people on.
Well, not only that, but even like even gamified apps now have ads. I have two daughters and a son, and it's constantly, Dad, can you download this app? I really want to play this app. So once I vet it out, like I go, okay, it's an app that's appropriate. They'll play it for 20 seconds, and then an ad pops up, and I'm like, so now there's even ads within games where you're reaching your audience. So it's ever changing, how to reach people and advertise.
And I'm curious how you feel the aftermarket is doing in this aspect. Do you feel like we're making strides toward being more present in those advertising forms, or do we have a ways to go?
Overall, the industry is making in my opinion, the right strides. I sit on the marketing executive council, and this is something that we talk about all the time. How do we create more engaging content? How is AI being a big influence? How do we arm our members with the latest and greatest so that they can, if it's the right fit for them and their organizations, and they can embrace some of these best practices. Some companies do it better than others, but it all depends on, having the right people in place, and making sure you have an organization that's open to doing something different, and understand you're not going to hit a home run every time. You're going to learn. Um, so I think if you go into it with an open mind, then there's tons of possibilities.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
Absolutely. And speaking of learning, I feel like it's something we are constantly doing in the aftermarket. As you've mentioned, there's been so many changes just in your specific career path. And so I feel like the topic of mentorship is especially important because you need to find that person who can help you get a foothold in the industry. So I'm curious how mentorship has played a role in your life and your career in marketing.
I tend to think about mentorship um, as somebody being accessible to you. I was thinking about that today actually when I was driving home from the gym, and what entered my head was somebody just being present, somebody being there for a phone call. Hey, let me pop into your office and talk to you about a situation. I feel like I've been blessed from a mentorship perspective. Um, Probably more oftentimes than not unintentional. And then I look back on it and said, oh my gosh, they were a great mentor, because they were always available, whether they knew they were doing it or not. So I think that's something that um, I reflect on now. So, my career path has had a lot of twists and turns. I used to live in Memphis, so I worked for AutoZone. I moved to Houston and I worked for XL Parts, and now I'm working for Motorcar Parts of America. And along the way, I've had a lot of really great relationships, a lot of really great people that have been available, that have been accessible, no matter if it's been a few minutes or more meeting type discussions. But it's been very important because I tend to reflect back on some of those conversations or feedback. One that I was actually thinking about it for this conversation today, probably the one that sticks out the most to me is, and I'll never forget it. So when I transitioned from stores, 'cause I used to work at AutoZone stores, and I've transitioned into their corporate office. My first manager was a lady by the name of Marilyn Hurst. I'll never forget her because her phrase was always "kill them with kindness." So no matter what you're facing, if you just think through that in all kinds of conversations, you'll end up on the other side, in a good spot. So it's something that I still think about today. She was my first hiring manager, my first manager, in that corporate environment. It's a phrase that I reference a lot even to this day. So yeah, so mentorship is important, and I've been blessed to say the least.
I think it's interesting because you talk about accessibility, and that kind of brings about the topic of mentorship again, in the sense of you might not realize someone is mentoring you until they are already mentoring you or have mentored you. It's not like you always sit down and have this formal conversation like, hey, I would really like you to be my mentor. You want to work on X, Y, and Z. Now, when those conversations happen, it's awesome. But sometimes it's just someone being present for you.
Yeah, and that's something that I try to do today. I'm in Central Time. A lot of the people that I engage with at Motorcar Parts of America are on the West Coast, so we got a 2 hour time difference. And so I always, whenever my guys or gals or somebody that I'm working with is calling, I always try to pick up the phone, or if I'm not available, text. I mean, there's been times I've taken calls at 9 o'clock and 9 o'clock at night at my time. And, I got my kids in the background screaming. So I always try to say, hey guys, hey, you're going to hear, you're going to hear some shrill. I have two little girls, and, it kind of resets the conversation. And, it's just being available, no matter how big or how small. It may be something where they're just letting me know they completed this task, or what are your thoughts on this? And I always try to look for moments, coaching moments, within some of these conversations, if the opportunity presents itself.
Absolutely. I'm curious for you. Is there anything you've consciously done or realized that you've done as you've switched from having mentors more to actually being in that mentorship role, you becoming the mentor?
Yeah, I've kind of done it unknowingly, because you're just kind of in the moment of the conversation. Like I've had a few instances where I've been asked about career advice. Hey, I have this opportunity over here. What do you think? And so while I may not be giving them the answer, I kind of just talk about things to look for, or questions to ask, or, make sure that think about things outside of work. So, we all wear different hats. So in this particular situation, I said, okay, yeah, that seems like a great opportunity, but how's it going to impact your lifestyle? How's it going to impact, your time at home with your little son, or with your wife? So I've kind of have those kind of conversations, and while I'm not telling them what to do, I'm just giving them things to consider. And what's ironic is that a lot of the same advice or conversations that I've had, it anchors me back to conversations I've had with my dad, just about life in general, to think about things beyond work, and things to think, because personal, work will influence your personal life, and you have to understand what's that value, and you need to enter that into the equation.
And I feel like after you have those conversations, you look back and you go, wow, someone asked me for advice. And then you realize how far you've made it in the industry because you were that person asking for advice, and you still might be asking for advice from other people who are more advanced than where you're standing right now.
Oh yeah, it never ends. Like I'm a firm believer that learning never ends. You never stop learning. Last week, I was at a customer's event, and I was able to reconnect with some old friends. And even then, I was asking, well, what do you think about this? And how do you think about that? And just, and I hadn't seen that person probably in a year and a half, and it just like picked up just like it was yesterday. So it never ends. I think now, today, more than ever, I try to learn as much as I can, even if it's from somebody outside of the industry. Like one of my really good friends is in food packaging, and naturally we start talking about tariffs and like, hey, how are you handling that, or how are you advertising or promoting your products to some of the larger grocery chains? And so it never ends. And so I try to learn and figure out how it's applicable. And I think mentorship is the same thing. You always want to pass it down to the next generation or to the next wave that's coming in.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned a little bit about your career, and we're going to ask you a little bit more about that because we have something called Your Aftermarket 3. So that can be 3 moments, career moves, events, whatever that have impacted you and really made you say, hey, I'm excited and I'm staying in the automotive aftermarket. So what are your 3?
Probably my three were realizing how big of an opportunity the aftermarket can provide. So when I transitioned from working in stores into the corporate office, and working in the corporate office for the first time, that's when my eyes just got. I had the eyes wide open moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is huge. Like you have no idea until you go from single store to, oh, now I'm overseeing things that are going to impact 5,000 plus stores. So I think that was
Yeah.
probably moment one. um Moment two would probably be when I took the leap of faith and moved back to Texas. 'Cause I used to live in Memphis. And so I took an opportunity to come back home, so to speak. Had a great mentor when I got here, a gentleman by the name of Frank Garcia, amazing individual, taught me a lot about patience. And he was there to help guide me. And we're still friends today. So that was probably moment two, leaving what I had known for so long and coming to Houston. And then probably moment three, and this is funny, um, is when my kids started asking me about stuff that I'm about work. Because there's times where I'm at the kitchen table and I'm looking at videos, or I'm looking at sales collateral, or I'm working with the team on calls. And there's like a video that we were putting final edits to, and my son, who loves to draw, he's very artistic. We start watching the video, and he starts asking me about alternators and starters, and what does remanufactured mean and what does renewed. So we start talking about concepts, and instantly I'm like, oh my gosh, like my son is now asking me about this stuff. And it's funny when I think about my kids, like my kids were all born at obviously different points in my life, but they were all associated with one of my jobs that I've had. So then that was kind of, I was reflecting on that, so that was kind of interesting. But yeah, I would probably say those are the top 3 moments.
So you've really like grown up in the aftermarket from working in that one store to now
Oh yeah.
working with a bunch of different people and organizations.
Yeah, my first job was a summer job delivering parts. I believe I was 18 at the time. Yeah, delivering parts. I learned how to drive a stick shift. Had no clue how to do it, other than my store manager telling me to go pick up a 55-gallon drum of oil from the distribution center. And, oh yeah, here are the keys to the truck. And I said, well, I don't know how to drive a stick. And he's like, well, you're going to learn today. So that's how I learned.
So you started there and look at you now. I'd say that's pretty impressive. And now you know how to drive a stick shift. So there you
And
go.
now I know how to drive a stick shift, right?
All
With a
right.
55-gallon drum of oil in the back.
You should put that on your special skills somewhere. But thank you so much for joining us today. You've been a great guest, and thank you to everyone who's watching.